Excuse me, do you have the time? No need to be so wooden. Now we all know that trees can't talk, but you can use wood to keep track of time. Now personally, I find this amazing. You can get solid lumps of wood meshed together in such a way that you can keep track of time as it passes. Now when I was a kid, I went to a friend's house and his parents had this beautiful, elegant grandfather clock. And when I was there, they opened the door, pulled a weight down, and I asked them what they were doing. They told me that putting the weight down would keep the clock powered for another 48 hours, and even at a young age, that completely blew my mind. And it's something that I'd quite like to build myself. However, it is something that seems quite complicated, and there's one part of the clock I'm particularly interested in. So you can split each clock into about 3 sections. You've got the hands, which tell the time. You've got the things making the hands work together, which are the gears. And then you've got the part that makes sure all the gears are running at the right speed. And this is the bit that interests me. This is the escapement mechanism. Now it's the escapement mechanism that gives the clock the familiar tick-tock sound. It's also the part of the clock that I know least about. So in this video, I'm going to do some research, find out how they work, and then build my own one. Not necessarily to keep track of time, but I do want it to keep a steady beat, and I also want it to look amazing. I want to build a sort of natural looking mechanism that doesn't actually look like a mechanism. I'm not going to worry too much about the timing or the speed or how it's going to function on the clock. There's other things to bear in mind, things such as runtime, how long it's going to be powered for by one weight. If I was doing a clock, I'd want it to run for a few days, but where it's just a sculpture, 30 seconds is plenty. So this means I don't have to worry too much about efficiency, but I can focus on the aesthetics a bit more. Now I really love this style of mechanism that Dolph Parenti has got on his YouTube channel. I'll drop a link in the description below. And this is the kind of aesthetics I would like to go for. So to break down what I found when researching escape mechanisms, it comes down to 3 things. You've got the power, which in this case is going to be the weight. For this, my hand and the tape here is the weight. As this goes down, it's going to spin around whatever it's attached to. In this case, it's attached to some toilet roll. In the final design, it's going to be attached to a escapement wheel to make it spin, and it's not going to be tape either. The second thing you're going to need with an escapement mechanism is the pendulum. This will swing backwards and forwards, and how fast this swings backwards and forwards will control the timing. And then to connect the weight and the pendulum together, we're going to need a series of gears and an escapement wheel. So the next step was to make the design in SolidWorks. Now I did find this particularly difficult, and I did about 5 different versions before I finally had a working prototype. And here is my escapement mechanism from the future. Now I've gone a bit more complicated because I've decided to have 2 gears here, but the idea is this is the escapement wheel. As the wheel spins, it pushes around one gear, which pushes the other gear forwards, and this gear here will touch this tooth. As the wheel continues, it will then push it back, and it'll go back to the beginning again and go to the other gear. So behind this wheel here, along the axis, we're going to wrap a bit of string and have a weight hanging down, and this will pull the wheel around. The only thing is, if we do this, the wheel will spin really fast and the weight will drop straight to the floor. So what we're going to do is put a pendulum attached to this cog here, that's what this holds for, and it's going to swing backwards and forwards, and the weight of the pendulum is going to slow down how quick the wheel can turn, and then this is also going to set our time. So here is the pendulum, again no expense spared, it's in the form of some tape. But this is to show the point that the longer the pendulum is, the slower it will swing backwards and forwards, and the shorter the pendulum is, the faster it will swing backwards and forwards. This will help us control the speed of the mechanism. Before we go any further, this is just a prototype. The final one looks a lot better than this, so bear with me, you'll see it at the end. But when I was designing this, I hit 2 really big problems. The first one was I didn't know where to place this gear. And the second thing I couldn't work out was how to make it push one gear and then the other gear when designing it. This was one of my failed attempts. Now both of these issues were solved by one realization. And that was the assumption that every time the wheel rotated, it would need to rotate 40 degrees before it touched the next gear, as 40 degrees is how far it'd have to spin before it got to where the next tooth was. What I needed to realise was it was actually only half a turn before the next gear would come in and meet the other tooth. And it also helped me determine where I needed to put the second gear. What I had to do was measure halfway between 2 teeth, and the axis of the second gear would have to go along that line. So the things I'm going to consider before I started is, because I've used a weight and obviously the weight's got to come down, this mechanism has got to be wall mounted or at least off the ground. And the wood I've decided to try for this project is oak. Now oak is probably a bad choice for this because oak will expand and contract with water and heat and moisture. So people would generally use plywood. But I'm really not keen on the look of plywood. So where I'm focusing on the aesthetics and I'm not too worried about the efficiency, I'm going to test oak and see if it works. But before I make it out of oak, I want to make it look a bit more interesting. And to do that, I'm going to do something an engineer would never do and make it less efficient. So I'm going to leave only the essential point, like where the axes are and the points of contact, and then make everything else look a bit rough and wiggly and get rid of any straight lines or nice curves. And I came up with something like this. But it still works exactly the same, and I did actually do a prototype of this to make sure it worked, and then I've decided to cut it out of oak. So this is the sheet of oak that I have laser cut all of the parts out of. Now the carving is one of my favourite bits, and this is where I got carried away, so I forgot to film it. But here's a piece that didn't cut too well, mainly because it had a knot in it, and I'll just give you a quick idea of what I did. So for the wheel, I wanted kind of like a webbed foot idea. Obviously it's in a circle, so it looks nothing like a foot. But if you think of how a frog or a capybara has its toes, the longer bits coming out I want to be thicker, and between them I'm going to carve in and make it thinner. For this I'm using a big ball shaped carving bit. This is one from Kurtzel. They do really good bits that last a long time. I have no affiliation with them, I just really like their product. And as you can see, it easily carves into this oak, which is quite a hard wood. After that, I use this drum sander. I find the drum sander is really good at getting rid of sharp edges. It's good for curving over corners and giving them a rounded edge. In terms of detail, I'm actually not going to do too much more. I don't want to sand this really smooth, I quite like the rugged look. And I don't intend on adding oil to this either, as it might make the wood expand and cause trouble with the mechanism moving. And after it was carved, I designed a reel in SolidWorks. This is going to attach behind the wheel, have some string around it so I can attach the weight to pull the wheel around. Then I used brass rods to attach all the pieces together. Okay, so now I've got it to this stage. The only issue now is that when I put on the string, it takes quite a lot of effort. That's going to be because of the friction around the wood and the brass rods. So I've ordered some of these, and what I'm going to do is make the hole bigger on the wood and then clamp it into place using these. Here's a little tip for you. If you've got a thin drill bit, put it all the way into the chuck. Put it all the way into the chuck. So here's a little tip for you. If you've got a thin drill bit, put it into the chuck as far as it'll go. And when you're drilling, it's less likely to snap. So this is my first time using a tap and die set. I could just solder the bushings on, but I like the idea of being able to remove them. So I've tapped an M3 thread into there, and I'm going to use a grub screw to hold them into place. Whoops. So there we go, that's a lot looser now compared to what it used to be like. Just going to do that another 3 more times. So now it works like this. Whoops. It works a lot quicker, but there is one issue which is really annoying me. As we spin this, the tooth here is not actually touching this cog because the weight of the cog is pushing it backwards. So to solve this issue, I'm thinking of putting a counterweight on here. Actually, after reconsidering, I might not actually need to put any weight on this one because when I put a pendulum on, it might just work. So I'm going to build a pendulum and see how it goes. So I know I wanted to make this all out of wood, but I've already used brass, so if I used rock on the pendulum, it wouldn't be the end of the world. So that's what I decided to do. I decided to go for 2 brass rods side to side, my thought being that when the rock swings, it'll be more stable. But I was about to find out that both of these ideas were really bad. Okay, so the question now is, does it work? No. The weight is too heavy and it's too much pressure on the wheel trying to make it spin. But luckily, I really suck at soldering and it's all just come off anyway. So I'm going to redesign the pendulum. So I soldered it on upside down. Okay, so now I have a makeshift pendulum. This is just to see if I'm going in the right direction. Okay, so I'm actually going to call this a success. It's not perfect, but we've got a nice smooth runtime, and I want to get this project finished. As much as I love it, it's becoming quite challenging.
So, as the rock was too heavy, I decided to go back to wood. I needed to get it from 240 grams back down to 7 grams.
Okay, so now we have this. That's not supposed to happen. Okay, for now I've just taped it on the back and it was a bit loose. I think that was why it really sped up there. So what I'm going to do anyway is I think this steel needs to be considerably lighter, so I'm going to spend more time carving it, make it lighter. Okay, so it's still struggling a little bit. What I'm going to do is make the pendulum shorter. Making the pendulum shorter will mean it's less force on the cogs, but it'll also make it go faster backwards and forwards. Ideally, I'd rather it go slower. Having said that, I could just make a new, smaller pendulum.
So at this point, I just decided the best thing to do would be to start a new pendulum from scratch. So I just used a smaller piece of wood, and I'm going to do a simpler design for this one. Now what I'm doing here is a terrible idea, but again, it's the best one I have. I don't have a lathe, so I'm using the wood on the drill bit and using another power tool to carve into it. Bad idea, but it worked. Don't copy this. And don't copy this either. So the idea of this is to get a small piece of wood that weighs 7 grams. Now I managed to use the power tools to get it down to a small size, and as you can see when I place it on the weights, it weighs exactly 7 grams.
And the good thing about this is that friction holds it in place, so I can easily just change the height. And this means I can change the timing of the mechanism by moving this up and down, which is pretty cool. It's just come unsoldered. I really need to learn how to solder. It's lighter, resoldered on, and this should work. This should work. It's working. There's a slight change in the speed, but I think it depends on what angle I hold it at. We're finally getting somewhere. I feel like this is the hardest part done now, and it's a home straight now. Is that a thing? I really love that sound as well. Okay, so I now have 2 issues. Well, I have a lot of issues, but 2 issues with this mechanism. The first one being that the solder joint's not holding on the back, so I'm going to try brazing because it should be a stronger way of holding the metal together. And secondly, it's quite hard to wind up because to wind it up I've got to unlink the cogs in such a way that they hold and then put pressure on the wheel and turn it around. It's very awkward. And as this is a sculptural piece, every time I want to show someone how it works, I'm going to have to wind it up. It's going to lose its fun for me, and therefore I just won't use it. So this is a problem I'm going to need to solve. So I've gone online and I've had a look at a lot of other wooden clocks, and what I have found is a lot of people are using ratchets. So they put a crank on the front of the wheel and you can turn it around and do it up that way. However, for me, this will ruin the aesthetics of the clock, so I've ruled that option out. So what I've done is I've 3D printed this. This is a ratchet that will link to a bike chain. Now this part will attach to the wheel, and when it's attached, it will only be able to spin with the wheel. So what you can see on the sprocket part of the ratchet is I've got these little springs in there, which can be pushed away. So when this spins this way, it will push the springs out the way, and then when it turns the other way, it will catch on those springs and not be able to move. If you're interested in how to design the sprocket, leave any questions down below and I can go into detail about all the different decisions I had to make within the design process. So when I put the bike chain on there, you can see it turns the whole wheel. Then if I hold the front still and then pull the other way, So I've redesigned the mechanism with some guides either side. So that way, when the chain comes back off, it automatically goes back on again. So I guess the next step is to replace the piece already on there for the new ratchet sprocket theme. And this is one of the reasons I'm so pleased I didn't just solder on these bushings. Okay, so now we have this. It works, it works. That's exactly what I want it to do. That's actually surprisingly smoother and better than I thought it would be. Okay, so the moment of truth. We have a new problem. Okay, so now the idea kind of works. So if I pull this down, it spins the wheel, and if I pull this side, the wheel stays where it is. But as you can probably tell, it's not moving now when it should be. And I think that's because I've got so much chain on this side that that now the rock's not heavy enough to pull it. So if I pull this down, I'm getting more weight on this side, less on this side. And about there, it starts working. So now I've got to balance the rock against the chain. It shouldn't be too much of a big deal, but needs to be done. Okay, so now I have found out why you do not use oak when you're making gears. Despite the fact it's less precise and there tends to be more friction than you would get from other materials, which makes it then harder for it to move freely. There are the added problems of the grain. You can see here I've actually had to glue this back on because where the pressure is too great and the repetition along the grain, it's just snapped this off. So I was getting pretty close to giving up, but beginning to regret oak as the choice of material. It wasn't just oak alone that was a problem with this mechanism. The weight pulling it around is really heavy, and it lost control and speed, and it was going at full power, full speed all the way around. And I believe that is because the fact that you can wobble this side to side and swing the pendulum means it's not as accurate as it should be. So I need to find a way of stopping this from rocking side to side on the axis. This project is a lot harder than I thought it would be. So after a bit of sleep, I decided the best thing to do would be to 3D print a support brace. And then redesign it because you could see it from the front. And then I redesigned it again. So it had a part that connects the two brass rods together, and the bit that extends will now stop twisting. Okay, so I've tested it again and the tooth has come off again. I don't think the super glue is going to work, but I'm going to try it one more time. So you know what doesn't split easily? Metal. Oh man, why has it done that? I think it just needed more heat. So now the idea is to drill a hole and replace the wood with the metal. I actually do think this might help the aesthetics, give it a bit more interest, and obviously it will solve the problem of the missing tooth. Just got to be careful to carve it in a way that looks like it was part of the piece from the beginning. Okay, so I've deviated from using wood and relied a lot on my 3D printer now. So I decided to make a mounting plate out of PLA and attach the mechanism to the wall, because after all, it will make it easier to test. So I've got my drill with 3 extensions because I might have to go in a bit deep. I think 2 will be enough, but it looks cooler with 3, so I'm going to go with 3. Now I've gone for a big chunky screw with a big head. I've purely done that for aesthetic reasons. I think it's going to look a lot nicer with a bigger head than with a countersunk one that goes into the wall. And as I've built this office, I happen to know that there's a wire that goes somewhere around here that way, so you could hear a loud bang in a minute. Now I'm not going to put these in completely square because I think looking neat is not actually going to help the aesthetics of this sculpture. I'm absolutely terrified of hitting this wire, but we're all good so far. Okay, Okay, so I've kind of got it working. I want a handle for this part now. So what I've done is I've got the pendulum that went wrong from earlier, cut that part off, and now I've got a handle. So this is what it looks like now. I've been balancing up the weight against the pendulum. Now counterintuitively, making a heavier pendulum and a lighter weight has made it work more smoothly and a bit slower. So originally I had to put more weight on this side to pull the pendulum along, but what I found was I was getting a very fast sound. It was very rushed and I didn't like the way it was. Kind of like. So I added more weight to the pendulum with a rock, which actually worked. It slowed down the ticking. And then the weird thing was when I took off some weight off of the driving weight, it kept running smoothly, which at first was really confusing for me because I thought that this weight was pulling the wheel around. But actually it's not fighting against the pendulum, it's working with it, like a friend. Oh, friend! So the pendulum actually wants to swing, it just needs a little encouragement from the weight, so it doesn't have to be as heavy as I thought it did. So to start it, all I have to do is push the pendulum. Now, it is not perfect, as you can probably hear. It is starting to speed up as the rock drops. Now the reason for that is that the chain weighs about 200 grams. So when the chain is on this side and the weight is down, we've got an extra 200 grams on this side. And when I pull this down, I now have 200 grams on the other side. So what I've actually got is a 400 gram swing, and bearing in mind, the weighted rock here only weighs 500 grams. So it's quite a big swing, which means it's pulling around the mechanism a bit faster. So a way I could have got around that would be go back to some twine or some string. It's a lot lighter and it will hardly make any difference to the weight, and this will then give the mechanism a steady beat. However, if I ever went back to string, to do it back up, I'd have to spin this wheel around, disengage these gears, and it would be really annoying and a lot of effort. I like the fact I can just pull down this chain and it's ready to go again. So when I first started this project, I wanted to make a heartbeat of a clock out of wood. However, since then, it has changed quite a bit. I've used rock and I've used metal as well. This was more for efficiency, and I also like the way it looked. And the heartbeat doesn't run quite as steady as I was hoping. It probably needs to see a doctor. But I am really happy with the compromises I've made. I've gone for aesthetics and enjoyment over the practicality of it. And for a sculpture, that's all I really wanted. And for a statement piece on the wall, I'm really happy with this. I have learned so much on this journey. I've made so many failures, but in the end, I've got to a point where I'm really happy. Now, if you look to the side here, you'll see there's a bit of space here, and that is for the name of this mechanism. I haven't yet decided what it is. So if you have any ideas, let me know in the comment section down below, and the one that gets the most likes will be the name of this mechanism. So now it's time to show you the sexy video of this mechanism in action, and going forwards, if you've taken one thing away from this video, don't ask yourself if you can, ask yourself how you can.